Well, welcome to One Nation, a Sports Locker Magazine Extra. I'm your host, Kirk DeMars, and tonight we're going to have a special Memorial Day program for you. Wanted to honor those men and women who have paid that ultimate price, um, who served our country and who fought hard and defended our freedom. So we want to honor each and every person right now that is currently or has served in the military. We want to say thank you for your service. Tonight, I want to do a special thing, though. We're going to go through and we're going to talk about Memorial Day and the significance of it and why it's so important and how it all came to be about so that we can have a little bit more knowledge when we are celebrating this holiday. I just feel like it is an important thing that we go through historically and we observe in the right way and give honor where honor is due. Along the program tonight, if you will jump in and if there's any family member that lost their life in military service or a friend that you know of, please type in their name and also the service military branch that they were in. If you will do that, we just want to honor them on here. And then also, you can, if you have served or somebody else has served, type in your name and also the branch of service that you were in. All right, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll go through and talk about Memorial Day and how it all came about. Memorial Day was originally known as Decoration Day. It's a federal holiday in the United States for honoring and mourning the U.S. military personnel who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. From 1868 to 1970, it was observed on May 30th. Since 1970, it is observed on the last Monday of May. Many people visit cemeteries and memorials on Memorial Day to honor and mourn those who died while serving in the U.S. military. Many volunteers place American flags on the graves of military personnel in national cemeteries. Memorial Day is also considered the unofficial beginning of summer in the United States. The first national observance of Memorial Day occurred on May 30th, 1868. Then known as Decoration Day, the holiday was proclaimed by Commander in Chief John A. Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic to honor the Union soldiers who had died in the Civil War. This national observance was preceded by many local ones between the end of the Civil War and Logan's declaration. Many cities and people have claimed to be the first to observe this holiday. However, the National Cemetery Administration, a division of Department of Veterans Affairs, credits Mary Ann Williams with originating the idea of strewing the graves of Civil War soldiers, Union and Confederate, with flowers. Official recognition as a holiday spread among the states, beginning with New York in 1873. By 1890, every Union state had adopted it. The World Wars turned it into a day of remembrance for all members of the U.S. military who fought and died in service. In 1971, Congress standardized the holiday as Memorial Day and changed its observance to the last Monday in May. Memorial Day was intended to honor those who served in the U.S. forces that died in their service. There's two other days we celebrate those who have served or are serving in the U.S. military. There's Armed Forces Day, which is earlier in May, an unofficial U.S. holiday for honoring those currently serving in the armed forces. And then there's Veterans Day on November 11th, which honors all those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. Now, there are different origins that have claimed the beginning, or there's different states and different people that have claimed the beginning origins of Memorial Day. We want to take a look. There's a variety of cities and people who have claimed origination of Memorial Day. In some such cases, the claims relate to documented events occurring before or after the Civil War. Others may stem from general traditions of decorating soldiers' graves with flowers rather than specific events leading to the national proclamation. Soldiers' graves were decorated in the U.S. before and during the American Civil War. Other claims may be less respectable, appearing to some researchers as taking credit without evidence while erasing better evidenced events or connections. We're going to do both precedents in the South and precedents in the North, and I think you will find many of these very interesting. Some of the precedents in the South. Charleston, South Carolina, on May 1st, 1865. In Charleston, South Carolina, the recently freed black population held a parade of 10,000 people to honor 257 dead Union soldiers. The soldiers had been buried in a mass grave at the Washington Race Course, having died at the Confederate prison camp located there. After the city fell, the freed black population unearthed and properly buried the soldiers, placing flowers at their graves. Historian David Blight has called this commemoration the first Memorial Day. However, no direct link has been established between this event and General John Logan's 1868 proclamation for a national holiday. There's other Southern states. According to the United States Library of Congress, Southern women decorated the graves of soldiers even before the Civil War's end. Records show that by 1865, Mississippi, Virginia, and South Carolina all had precedents for Memorial Day. The earliest Southern Memorial Day celebrations were simple, somber occasions for veterans and their families to honor the dead and tend to local cemeteries. In following years, the Ladies Memorial Association and other groups increasingly focused rituals on preserving Confederate culture and the lost cause of the Confederacy narrative. Now let's move on to precedents of the North. In 1863, cemetery dedication at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, included a ceremony of commemoration at the graves of dead soldiers. Some have therefore claimed that President Abraham Lincoln was the founder of Memorial Day. However, Chicago journalist Lloyd Lewis tried to make the case that it was Lincoln's funeral that spurred the soldiers' grave decorating that followed. This turned into a National Decoration Day. On May 5th, 1868, General John A. Logan issued a proclamation calling for Decoration Day to be observed annually and nationwide. He was Commander in Chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization of and for Union Civil War veterans found in Decatur, Illinois. With his proclamation, Logan adopted the Memorial Day practice that had begun in the Southern states 2 years earlier. The Northern states quickly adopted the holiday. In 1868, memorial events were held in 183 cemeteries in 27 states and 336 in 1869. One author claims that the date was chosen because it was not the anniversary of any one particular battle. Logan's wife noted that the date was chosen because it was the optimal date for flowers to be in bloom in the North. Why was it a state holiday? When did it become that? In 1873, New York made Decoration Day an official state holiday, and by 1890, every northern state had followed suit. There was no standard program for the ceremonies, but they were typically sponsored by the Women's Relief Corps, the Women's Auxiliary of Grand Army of the Republic, which had 100,000 members. By 1870, the remains of nearly 300,000 Union dead had been reinterred in 73 national cemeteries, located near major battlefields and thus mainly in the South. The most famous are Gettysburg National Cemetery in Pennsylvania and Arlington National Cemetery near Washington, D.C. When did it when did Decoration Day, when did it get renamed to Memorial Day? By the 20th century, various Union memorial traditions celebrated on different days merged, and Memorial Day eventually extended to honor all Americans who fought and died while in the U.S. military service. Indiana, from the 1860s to the 1920s, saw numerous debates on how to expand the celebration. It was a favorite lobbying activity of the Grand Army of the Republic. In 1884, the GAR handbook explained that Memorial Day was the day of all days in the GAR calendar in terms of mobilizing public support for pensions. It advised family members to exercise great care in keeping the veterans sober. Memorial Day speeches became an occasion for veterans, politicians, and ministers to commemorate the Civil War, and at first to rehash the atrocities of the enemy. They mixed religion and celebratory nationalism for the people to make sense of their history in terms of sacrifice for a better nation. People of all religious beliefs joined, and the point was often made that German and Irish soldiers, ethnic minorities which faced discrimination in the United States, had become true Americans in the baptism of blood on the battlefield. We've got just a little bit more to cover here. And again, today we're honoring those who had fallen in service to our country in the military. Again, I would encourage you, if there's anyone that is in your family or a friend that you know of that perished while in service in the military, would you please go ahead and put their name in the comments as well as the branch of service that they were in? And also, if you yourself or somebody that you know is in the military currently or has served and is a veteran, would you just put their name in there and just say thank you for your service and put their name and which branch that they served in? We just want to, again, honor those who have served. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. And I think you'll be astonished with a list that I'm going to present to you as far as the number of deaths that we have had in the wars throughout the United States history. So we'll be right back, but first we're going to go ahead and hear from our sponsor, CNS Business Service, CNS Employment Solutions. I've got to get that right again. All right, here we go.
CNS Business Services has been connecting employees with employers since 1977. Recently, CNS rebranded to CNS Employment Solutions to more clearly define their mission of serving the needs of applicants, employees, and businesses while remaining current and evolving with the changes in the workforce. One important thing has not changed. CNS Employment Solutions partners with a wide variety of employers, placing employees in jobs that match their skills and needs.
Say yes to CNS.
All right, we want to thank CNS Employment Solutions for everything that they do as far as finding jobs for those people that are looking for good employment right here in mid-Missouri, as well as filling those positions for those high quality employers that we have here too. So again, thank you to CNS Employment Solutions. All right, we've been talking about and honoring those that have served in the military. Today is a day that we honor those that paid the ultimate price. And, in John 15:13, it talks that there is no greater love than this, than one who lays down their life for another. So we really appreciate those who have paid that ultimate price. Um, I want to bring up this here real quick. We have Shelly Schertz. She said her dad was Army in the Vietnam. And thank you, Daddy, for your service and all who served. Thank you, Shelly, for that. And thank you, Larry, we just really appreciate your service and everything that you've done. All right, I'm going to continue on with a few things here, talking about Memorial Day. The name Memorial Day, which was first attested in 1882, gradually became more common than Decoration Day after World War II, but was not declared the official name by federal law until 1967. On June 28, 1968, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which moved 4 holidays, including Memorial Day, from their traditional dates to a specified Monday in order to create a convenient 3-day weekend. The change moved Memorial Day from its traditional May 30th date to the last Monday in May. That law took effect at a federal level in 1971. In 1913, one Indiana veteran complained that young people born since the war had a tendency to forget the purpose of Memorial Day and make it a day for games, races, and revelry. Instead of a day of memory and tears, indeed, in 1911, the scheduling of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway car race, later named the Indianapolis 500, was vehemently opposed by the increasingly elderly GAR. The state legislature in 1923 rejected holding the race on the holiday, but the New American Legion and the local officials wanted the big race to continue. So Governor Warren McCray vetoed the bill and the race went on. In 2000, Congress passed the National Moment of Remembrance Act, asking people to stop and remember at 3 p.m. On Memorial Day, the flag of the United States is raised briskly to the top of the staff and then solemnly lowered to the half staff position, where it remains only until noon. It is then raised to full staff for the remainder of the day. The National Memorial Day concert takes place on the West Lawn of the United States Capitol. The United States has a secular civil religion, one with no association with any religious denomination or viewpoint, that has incorporated Memorial Day as a sacred event. With the Civil War, a new theme of death, sacrifice, and rebirth enters the civil religion. Memorial Day gave ritual expression to these themes, integrating the local community into a sense of nationalism. The Americans borrowed from different religious traditions so that the average American saw no conflict between the two, and deep levels of personal motivation were aligned with attaining national goals. You've probably seen different people that have been at grocery stores or different places and they have the red poppies. So I want to just quickly talk about this and then we'll get into some of the um, different wars and the lives that were lost in those wars. In 1915, following the Second Battle of Ypres, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, a physician with the Canadian Expeditionary Force, wrote the poem In Flanders Fields. Its opening lines refer to the fields of poppies that grew among the soldiers' graves in Flanders. Inspired by the poem, YWCA worker Moina Michael attended a YWCA Overseas War Secretaries Conference 3 years later wearing a silk poppy pinned to her coat and distributed over 2 dozen more to others present. The National American Legion adopted in 1920 the poppy as its official symbol of remembrance. All right. Thank you for sitting there and listening, but I think it's important that we continue to educate and talk about our history. Yes, this is a sports program, but we are only allowed to have the freedom to do things like this because of that price that so many men and women have paid for this freedom. So again, I appreciate you being in here and watching this, and I want to move now into recognizing all those that had lost their lives in the different wars. You can see this list on the screen here. The American Civil War, which was in 1861 to 1865, there were 620,000 deaths in that war. The next closest was World War II in 1939 to 1945, which had 405,399 deaths. World War I, 1917 to 1918, had 116,516 deaths. The Vietnam War, 1965 to 1973, 58,209 men and women lost their lives. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, 36,516 men and women lost their lives. The American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, there were 25,000 deaths in that war. The War of 1812, which lasted until 1815, saw 20,000 deaths. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, had 13,283 deaths. The War on Terror, from 2001 to present, and of course this number will be higher just because of the time of this list, but that shows that we have had 7,705 deaths. The Spanish-American War, which was in 1898, had 2,446 deaths. You know, these are some humbling numbers of all the men and women who have laid down their lives in service to this country. And I think it is only fitting that we take this day and we set it aside to honor those men and women and say thank you um, to all of those that are serving now, all of those that are placing their own lives on the line each and every day in military service. And again, we want to thank you for what you are doing in defending our freedom. We also want to thank our veterans that are currently serving or that had served. And we want to thank you for everything that you have done as far as defending our freedom and serving this country. What an honor, what an honor to to know that you are out there for us. What an honor to be able to say thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts. We appreciate what you have done, and we know that there was a time that you went unappreciated. But know this, that you are appreciated and you are loved by your country. I know that there's a lot of men and women that continue to struggle from PTSD. There's a lot of men and women that are homeless out on the streets because of those struggles. There's a lot of men and women that struggle with drug abuse and addictions. There's a lot of men and women that lost families. Um, there's a lot of men and women that have had a lot of horrible circumstances in their life, all in serving our country. So I want you to think about them. Take a moment and take some time to pray for those that you know that have served or are serving currently. And again, let's remember those that have paid that ultimate price. And if you see a person that's been in military service, or if you were made aware of that, tell them thank you. Tell them thank you. That is one of the best things that we can do. Say thank you for your service. All right. So we've talked about Memorial Day today, and I hope that in the years to come, maybe you will take a little bit more time and study a little bit of the history and find out why it is so important to look back and to recognize. We have to look back in order to see where it is that we're going. And as a country, we have a lot of things that we need to improve on. And it's the men and women that are fighting those battles for us each and every day that are stepping forward to make sure that we have the freedom to make those changes. All right. I wanted to say one more thing real quick. We've got our next issue of Sports Soccer Magazine getting ready to come out. It was put on a little bit of a delay. A couple of our writers had a death in the family, so that put us past our deadline, and then the printer had to restructure things. So we'll be coming out here within the week with that issue. Be looking forward to that. And also, we want to thank another sponsor that we have in the magazine is Big Whiskeys, that they sponsor our Coach of the Issue, and they do an outstanding job in recognizing those people that make sure that our young people are keeping a good head on their shoulders and doing the best that they can in their sport and in their school. All right. That's what I've got for you tonight. Again, I want to thank you for joining me on this Memorial Day. I wanted to make it short, but I felt like it was important. And Shelley, thank you again for your comments, and definitely thank you for praying for those, and we appreciate that. All right, this is your host, Kirk DeMars of One Nation, a Sports Soccer Magazine Extra. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you had lots of good barbecue or whatever else it was that you ate. But make sure that you get some rest so that you can get back to the normal days, getting back to those tomorrow. All right, until next week, God bless you. We'll see you then.